Afternoon all. Let's have a look at the very exciting game in round 1 of the Sinquefield Cup. Veselin Topalov playing white against Fabiano Caruana. So knight f3, knight f6, and we saw an English opening c4, c5 symmetrical so far. Knight c3, knight c6. Now after g3, Fabiano played a line which I think was popularised by Mikhail Botvinnik. I might be mistaken on this, but it's a popular move. Instead of carrying on in a purely symmetrical fashion, black plays this double-edged move d5. I say double-edged because it can, although it can exert d-file pressure, and maybe this d-pawn can be a bit weak later if it's faced with huge frontal pressure, it does actually mean the light squares in black's position are slightly weaker sometimes, and also c5 could be a target on that c-file when white takes c takes d5 here, which is the usual response. There is also d4 that has been played before apparently. Pardon me, try and get this move d4. This is meant to be just about equal, this position with black playing e6, and actually we can get this sort of thing. Looks, yeah, there are thousands of games from this position. It's like a Tarrasch defense. So okay, so white actually played c takes d5, knight takes d5, and you see that structure that white is going to try and put pressure now on the light squares. Bishop g2, the knight goes back, and it does actually help protect the rook. This sometimes can be significant for this diagonal, so for tactics on this diagonal. White castled, and now black reinforces that bind on the d4 square. So this is stemming back from Mikhail Botvinnik, this system. He used this system, I think, with some great success. a3, and you might be thinking, well, you know, this b4 could actually be prevented with a5. That's not usually played, actually, a5 here. I think white just carries on with d3 and then still targets c5 later. The usual move in this position is f6 or rook b8. Okay, so in fact rook b8 was played here. It's kind of getting out of the way on this diagonal as well. d3, bishop e7. So we're still in well-trodden book territory, I think. Bishop e3, is that slightly rare? No, it's a small game sample now actually. Bishop e3 has actually been played a few times before. So bishop e3, black castles, rook c1. You can see white's players targeting potentially c5, so either knight e4 or knight a4 on the cards to target c5 sometimes. Now this next move I think is good prophylaxis, this move bishop d7 here, and I'll show you why. I think because it's supporting that c6 knight. So let's see, if black actually didn't play bishop d7, let's say black does move like this, king h8, then knight a4, we're hitting c5, and if b6, then white has b4, and you see that pin on the c-pawn to the c6 knight is quite unpleasant. So bishop d7 seems to be a strong prophylaxis move. Now we see knight d2, and black has this luxury here move available now, knight d4. With that bishop on e3, it's difficult to kick this knight, and it can be a nuisance in conjunction with bishop g4 to provoke an extra weakness like f3, which white doesn't sometimes want to play. We see knight c4 now hitting e5, that's protected, and now here there's a junction point here. White played in the game f4, and that's kind of aggressive move f4. Potentially it's kind of weakening some squares around the king, though. But how else to play this position? With that entrenched knight on d4, this is quite uncomfortable in some respects. For example, let's say white plays knight e4. There's no real threat here. c5 is safeguarded. Say black plays bishop g4 now. It's celebrating that knight. White really doesn't want to take on d4 here because this structural transition is going to emphasize the E2 pawn and the E file. And black's also got that D5 square to use as well. So this could be quite uncomfortable. So it's difficult to suggest here, if we have this passive position as white, black doesn't seem to have anything to really worry about. So let's go back to the game. In the game we see F4. Will this turn out okay? We see now E takes F4, which seems to say goodbye to the D4 binds a little bit. Now bishop takes F4. White doesn't really, I think, want to play G takes F4 in this position. I think this is actually a nuisance move. Bishop G4 still a nuisance move, looking at E2. And there's potentially pressure down this E file coming up. So white plays bishop takes F4. And actually this is significant now for this diagonal for knight D5. You can see that diagonal's a bit sensitive. A knight D5, knight takes, there'll be a check. So black's got to be careful here about knight D5. Just to show that, say A6. Knight D5 would be very, very strong here with that pin on the rook. So what does Fabiano do here? He plays actually knight D to E6, kicking the bishop away, trying to kick the bishop away. Bishop goes back to D2. Could it go back to E3 out of interest? Why not go back to E3? I think that's okay as well. It's B6, and it's okay. So it goes back to D2. I think Veselin Topalov might have the idea of trying to put the bishop back on this diagonal after G4 is played, because it is slightly sensitive. We see that now, that after the move B6, we see this move G4. It's not liked at all by engines though, and actually statistically I've got to say, in all the engine analysis I've ever done, it's usually the case that a move like G4 worsens the evaluation as soon as an engine sees it. No, you shouldn't be doing that. In this particular position, it does seem quite lucrative to stick the bishop on that diagonal. I mean, is it sensitive? In conjunction with knight D5, yes, you could think it is sensitive. So I think black has to react very, very carefully here to get any benefit from this in terms of exploiting weaknesses. Fabiano plays the retreat, bishop E8. And we see this bishop wriggling around, bishop E1, so it's going to G3. That seems to be the main point of this. Now we see a forcing move B5, kicking the knight, knight E3. And now this bishop comes to parry that bishop G3 in advance. Of course, white doesn't want wretched pawns by playing bishop G3, that's pretty disgusting. Bishop takes, for example, queen D4, it's much better for black. So, okay, this is actually, is it easy to attack this bishop? That's the next question. Why can't a move like knight E4 be played? I think if knight E4, black actually has bishop F4 here, still preventing bishop G3 and attacking that knight. Say bishop F2. This looks quite pleasant for black. So say bishop F7. It seems difficult to remove this bishop from F4 actually, and it's awkward, this configuration with this pin here. So after bishop D6, it doesn't seem as though this is an easy thing to remove now from the diagonal. We see instead knight CD5, and black actually takes this now. Bishop takes D5, bishop F7, protecting the knight. And now white plays knight F5. The engines prefer black here, but I think precision is really needed to get anything from this position. What to do with this bishop? Well, actually, I think it is plausible just to put the bishop on C7. It's still quite pleasant. And you might think, why would Topalov want to play like this with his king slightly exposed? He's weakened his own king a bit on this diagonal. It is interesting, sometimes the attacking style of players like Topalov, it's double-edged. So he's playing with a double-edged sword to do this sort of thing. And here it doesn't seem as though white's up to much. But maybe even better than bishop C7 is what was played, bishop E5. Keeping on that diagonal, and also this D4 square could be handy as well, and it's looking at B2 as well. also, you know, kicking the knight and then taking on b2. So it's a cause of concern. As long as the bishop doesn't go to e7, I think this would have been good for white. Then bishop g3, and we've got that diagonal. Wonderful stuff. And the knight can even stay entrenched on f5. It doesn't have to take here. This would be quite pleasant for white and totally justify white's strategy. But yeah, this bishop, this dark square bishop, is being a nuisance here, and it's difficult to kick away from that central square. It's a nice central square looking at h2 and b2. So what does Veselin do? He plays queen d2, and you might think, well, hold on, the bishop's attacked. Not really. There's knight e7 here. So queen takes d5. There's knight e7 check. So that's not possible. But now we see knight d4. So there's actually bishop takes d5 threat. Not this one, because that's not on the cards. Bishop takes d5 is threatened. So white plays bishop takes f7. We see rook takes f7. And there's pressure on this f5 knight. The thing is there enough advantage for black to do anything with this position? Are there enough weaknesses around here? Okay, let's see. If white actually played knight takes d4, then queen takes d4 check looks unpleasant. Looking at g4 here, king h1, it might actually be possible just to take on g4. That's a nice move, or even other moves that might be possible. So that's not nice. The knight can't take on d4. The knight really, I don't think, wants to retreat. Again, we have a wretched pawn structure, potentially, or even worse, we just win the exchange with knight b3. So what does Topalov do about this? Well, actually, he played rook d1. It seems such a timid move. White has been shown to be very timid in this game so far. Now, knight takes f5 is played. And it looks as though this d4 check could be handy for winning b2 now. Quite unpleasant. If rook takes f5, then check. I think we can just take on b2, if nothing else. And there's not much compensation for white. And then black would have this, you know, potential pass pawn later. So anyway, white took with the g pawn, which still allows queen d4 check, but now bishop f2. Before, you know, there was taking that pawn, so the pawn's got out of the way from the queen for queen g4 check, taking the pawn with queen g4 check. Now, if we take on b2, then white can just take here and then take on c5, and this isn't entirely terrible. So black wants to get more from this position. Fabiano Caruana rejects that exchange of queens, basically. He plays queen g4 check, and look at this king. It doesn't look very safe. That h2 pawn in particular looks to be immediately attackable with very simple moves. The engine suggests black's got a big advantage here in this position. It does mention the crude queen h5, but not queen h3. On queen h3, bishop g1 is possible. I think that's the reason why here. Although black is still very, very comfortable in this position. But apparently queen h5 is technically stronger. I think it's keeping an eye on e2. It's still very uncomfortable for white. But in the game, even stronger than just going for the mate is what was played, c4. I think this shows great strength, positional strength of Fabiano Caruana, and extracting the most from each position. What is black actually threatening here? Well, let's have a look. If d takes, then in this position, actually, this is quite nasty. Queen e4 check, and just b takes, and look at this. We've got rook takes b2 on the cards. That looks to be putting white under great scrutiny. If rook b1, it seems horribly passive, and in fact we can just even win this pawn. There's all these checks to consider. So something like this, there's always a check here. So it is just winning a pawn there for not much. So that would be very unpleasant to open up this rook on b2. But after c4, you know, cd is now also an interesting option, or just putting pressure on e2. It's got out of the way of that bishop. This rook is protecting that pawn. So what does white do? He plays queen c2, and we see rook e8 here. Just simply the idea of building up on e2, and even the sacrificial bishop takes h2 is now on the cards for rook takes e2. This is a very dangerous position for white. White has been shown to be very passive here. It's a bit of a mystery, to be honest, actually, how white could have seemingly been made to play so passively, basically. D takes c4 is played, and this puts black's evaluation up significantly to nearly +3, 2.62 here on my stockfish here. What does white actually do in this position, though? If, let's say d4, just for sake of argument, d4, the bishop can stay on this torture diagonal with any of these moves, d6, c7 or b8. It's all torture for white. Looking at h2, threatening rook takes e2. Let's give an example. Say white protects, then black can double on e2. Say e3, then there's check, and then I think swinging the rooking starts to look dangerous. Or just in this position, actually more accurate, is just queen h3, and then white's in big trouble looking at that h2 again. So a horrendous position really here is emerging. So we see d takes c4, queen h5. What does white do? He can't play bishop g3, that's pinned, so bishop takes g3 is just winning a piece. So we see h4, not too many alternatives. Now queen g4, threatening a mate in 2 with the check. Queen d3, parrying that. B takes c4. The queen has to keep defending h3. And now it's going on to this horrible discovery line as well. For the moment, the bishop's pinned, but that's unpinned now, threatening horrible things like this. b3, and now all sorts of moves are just winning for black, actually. Anything, really. Bishop f4 would do. But in the game, bishop b2, it looks absolutely winning for black. And to be honest, I find it mysterious, the whole game, how white was just made to be absolutely passive. It's incredible. I have respect for the whole variation. I've tried to play this variation myself in blitz and in long games. I think it has retained popularity to the present day from the Botvinnik times. Just let's have another go at unraveling the mystery. So black really wants a fighting game. He didn't go for the symmetrical g6. It looks very sleepish to have constant symmetry in this English opening. Instead, d5, c takes. We saw knight d5. For the moment, this was all, we're talking more than 1,000 games from this position with knight c7. So I'm aware of this Botvinnik bind. I'm aware that sometimes if black plays like this, it's sometimes creating extra dark square weaknesses. But you see the way black played it. He's not fianchettoing the bishop. He's getting that bind, and he's also got this flexibility in his play that he doesn't even mind losing the e-pawn later. So here the most usual move is d3 actually, not a3. I don't know if we can talk about any errors here just because d3 is more popular just yet. f6 is more popular here than rook b8. So we see rook b8. Rook b1 has been played as well as d3. Is this position fundamentally passive for white? I think this bishop e3, it looks as though it's obstructive to kicking out a knight from d4 later, but it has been played before with a reasonable success rate. It's meant to be about equal, this position. So I say this is a little bit of a mystery how white seems to be just passive. Engine point of view here at this moment after bishop d7 is equality 0.00. Knight d2, not a terrible move. Knight d4, equal again. Knight c4, again. The engine here, it's about equal. f4 is even mentioned by the engine. So here, it was still at move 14, totally equal. Can I point to an inaccuracy here? E takes f4 apparently gives white something. So this is the mystery. I mean, b5 as well. This this is meant to be about equal. But what black did is meant to be slightly risky from an engine point of view at this depth. So I can't trace it here just yet, a source of any concern for white, until I think that G4 move. Can we really say that the first move which white wants to be creative was a problem? Well, here now, bishop d2, again, okay for white, about equal, b6. It is possible, this is it is possible that the move g4 starts to cause some concern for white. The engine is suggesting here knight e3 as a small advantage for white, or rook f2, or rook b1, or even bishop e4. Say knight e3, king h8, knight f5. Is this a better plan for white? It means that these two pawns are kept intact, which means that this bishop isn't a monster on this diagonal like we saw. It's so easy to make these observations in retrospect of a game though. I mean, I'm not sure. The trouble with this computer analysis, you know, okay, it doesn't move any pawns, but it's kind of sterile. Everything is with pieces, and that's why it's so much safer to do this, but it's not as exciting. Players like Topalov are very exciting. They play a move like g4. Everyone says, oh, they shouldn't have played g4 because the engines say so. But you're not changing the structure here with white. That's the thing. Look at this position. White is not aiming for a structural change, so we could end up just agreeing a draw soon. All piece play from white, okay, not offering any weaknesses. But on the other hand, what are the winning opportunities for white here? This looks to be equal this position. So yeah, we can clinically say, I think on the evidence, that g4 is a loosening move. But it took very good play, it seems, to prove. Basically, it's proving this diagonal is better for black than for white if he's going to reroute a bishop. So bishop e8, bishop e1, and it's at this moment we saw the b5 and the bishop d6. It just seems unfortunate for white that the diagonal is actually being hijacked by black. I think there's an important tactical note actually on this c5 pawn. Maybe a tiny miscalculation here. That this position, it looks as though c5 is on. Maybe this is why black's winning, you know, doing better from that diagonal. That knight takes c5 is not good. There's bishop d4. What does white do here? White's losing a piece because of that check on e3 and attacking c5. So black has basically hijacked white's structural plan. If I want to be kind of more objective about this, that's what's really happened here. It's like black's played like Petrosian. He's hijacked the weaknesses created by white very successfully. So bishop d6, black's sitting nicely, and it starts to go completely pear-shaped. So taking on d5, bishop f7, and then bishop still sitting on that hijacked diagonal with bishop e5. You've got to give credit for Topalov for giving it a go with g4. It just has evidently it's backfired. It's given white a lot of weaknesses now on the king side, which are just tapped into. And it's, as I've noted very recently, the centre is a great way of pivot to get access to all corners of the board. Very quick to use the centre as a pivot square, the central four squares as a pivot, attacking on all parts of the board. But here it's that h2 pawn which is very, very sensitive. After c4, this black's totally in the driving seat here, and it seems, you know, it's such a torturous diagonal actually now, in conjunction with e2 as well, for black just doubling rooks on e2. So yeah, I just found it a bit of a mystery how white was made to be so passive in this game, but I guess that's the answer. You know, Topalov tried to play something interesting with his pawns and got punished for it. You know, Petrosian had this style that he rarely lost any games, and he was often winning games when people tried too hard to attack him. So it reminds me a bit, you know, like that maybe, that style of play in this particular game for Fabiano Caruana. He didn't really have to do anything but exploit white's weaknesses, it seems. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.